Welcome to Insight to Income, where we turn powerful ideas into practical wealth. Today, we are embarking on a deep dive into, well, one of the most transformative books on financial literacy ever published. This isn't just about money.
Not at all.
It's a radical reevaluation of how we view work, success, and, the very structure of our economic lives. It really challenges that conventional path we're all taught.
The whole get a degree, get a job, work hard script.
Exactly. And it offers an entirely different roadmap for achieving true financial freedom and independence.
That's right. And I think the genius of the book lies in its narrative structure. It's this powerful, stark contrast between the philosophies of two men in the author's life.
Your two fathers.
Yeah, the two fathers. You have the poor dad who, represents the traditional high-achieving employee mindset. He's highly educated, has advanced degrees, and is focused relentlessly on job security, that regular paycheck.
Climbing the corporate ladder.
And then you have the rich dad. He lacks that formal education, but he was a street-smart, masterful entrepreneur. He wasn't concerned with earning a salary at all. His singular focus was on building and acquiring income-generating assets. He teaches the rules of money, not the rules of employment.
Our mission today for you is not just to summarize this contrast. We want to extract 9 essential, actionable lessons. We're going to move well beyond the simple definitions of assets and liabilities.
Right.
We'll get into the advanced mindset required to legally leverage taxes, use corporate structures, overcome these crippling psychological barriers, and ultimately move completely and permanently out of that financial rat race.
It's all about application.
This deep dive is about application, not just theory.
Let's jump right into the first principle because it's a massive psychological hurdle. You have to get over this one before anything else can really happen.
Okay, let's unpack this core thesis.
Yeah.
The rich do not work for money. It's fundamentally counterintuitive.
It is.
Because for most of us, money is the direct, necessary result of work. But the book argues that wealthy people prioritize chasing skills, opportunities, and assets that generate future income over chasing a direct salary today.
It's about understanding the function of time. When most people work, they're in a transactional relationship, time exchanged for money.
One for one.
Exactly. The employee is selling their most finite resource, their life, their labor, for a linear paycheck. And that relationship fundamentally caps your potential wealth because there are only so many hours in a day you can sell.
And the book just details this dramatic philosophical contrast between the two fathers on this very point.
Absolutely. The poor dad mindset is entirely defined by that salary focus and a fear-driven desire for security. This path conditions you to seek refuge in a high-paying job, believing that a higher income is the solution to all your financial problems. Their constant pursuit is for the next promotion, the next incremental raise, the promise of a stable retirement plan. The focus is all on internal validation, the title, the security, the prestige of the role.
But the author warns that this relentless pursuit of salary often falls victim to a phenomenon he calls lifestyle creep.
Precisely. You get the raise, and immediately the fear of being broke it dissipates. But then it's replaced by the desire for something more.
A bigger house, a new car.
Exactly. That desire fuels the acquisition of a bigger house, a more expensive car, luxury vacations, or just more consumption. The new income level doesn't decrease your financial stress, it just raises the baseline expenditure. It makes you more dependent on that higher paycheck than ever before.
So you're just running faster to stay in the same place.
You are, and I think that's the most critical point. The psychological trap he calls the rat race mechanism.
Right. The book makes it clear that most people are controlled not by their circumstances, but by their emotions, specifically fear and desire. Can you elaborate on how these two emotions keep people trapped?
This is the deep psychological insight of the book. The trap is fundamentally emotional. Fear, primarily the fear of losing money, the fear of bills, of debt collectors, or, the fear of social judgment.
Being seen as poor.
Yeah. That fear keeps people accepting the job, even if they hate it. They earn just enough to pay their obligations, which generates some temporary relief, only for the cycle to restart the next month. They're financially reactive, not proactive.
And then desire kicks in.
Then desire steps in. Once that fear is momentarily quieted by the paycheck, desire pushes them toward instant gratification. They see something they want, and instead of asking, is this an asset, they ask, can I get a loan for this?
Right.
This desire for things leads to debt, and that debt reinforces the fear, locking them back into the cycle of needing the job just to service the things they bought. The job becomes the master.
So the key isn't just earning more, but mastering those emotions so that money becomes a neutral tool, not an emotional coping mechanism.
Exactly. The rich dad mindset reverses this. Their decisions are based on opportunity, not fear. They see money as fuel for assets, and they engage in rigorous financial education and intelligent risk analysis. They're constantly asking, what can I acquire now that will generate income indefinitely, freeing me from depending on my labor?
That's the question.
And the deep dive insight from this chapter is centered on that power dynamic. If you do not master your fear and desire, money becomes the master of your life. It becomes a tool of control rather than a tool for freedom. They understand that emotional mastery is the first form of leverage.
That makes the chapter takeaway incredibly clear. Money is a powerful tool, but emotional mastery is the prerequisite to financial mastery. You have to handle the stress and the fear before you can ever hope to handle the complexity of investing and asset building.
You really do. You cannot make sound, strategic, long-term decisions if your immediate decisions are constantly driven by short-term emotional panic or consumer desire.
So we've nailed down the emotional control needed, but what's the financial language we actually have to learn? Moving on, the focus shifts now from pure mindset to technical understanding. Chapter 2 hammers home the idea that income level does not create wealth. Assets do.
This is a direct, scathing critique of traditional education systems, really all over the world. The book highlights a massive systemic flaw. Our schools successfully prepare us to be excellent employees. Doctors, lawyers, engineers.
Sure, tradespeople.
Right. They teach professional skills that lead to high income, but they utterly fail to teach the fundamental language of money itself, accounting, taxation, and investing.
It's just not on the curriculum.
It's not. And the author points out that you can graduate at the top of your class with 3 advanced degrees, but if you don't understand how cash flows through a personal financial statement, you are financially illiterate.
And that's why we see so many high earners who, despite making hundreds of thousands a year, still end up broke or living paycheck to paycheck.
That's it. They speak the language of their profession fluently, but they are financially mute.
We need to define the terms clearly because the book's definitions of asset and liability are the foundation of this literacy. They're simple, but fundamentally different from how most people use them.
They must be drilled in. An asset, according to the book, is anything that puts money into your pocket, regardless of whether you are actively working. It generates positive cash flow.
Like a rental property or a business that runs itself.
Or stocks that pay dividends, things like that.
And the inverse. A liability is anything that pulls money out of your pocket. It requires continuous, ongoing payment or maintenance that reduces your net cash flow. This is debt, consumption, anything requiring your time and money to sustain it without return.
And this simple definition then leads to the common misconception that the book spends a lot of time dismantling. Most people, especially high-income employees, accumulate liabilities while mistakenly believing they're assets.
And the classic example is the primary residence.
The classic, most powerful example.
Let's focus on the house example, because that challenges decades of conventional wisdom. We're conditioned to believe a home is the greatest asset we'll ever own. Why does the book classify a mortgaged home as a liability?
Because the classification has to be based on the cash flow statement, not just the balance sheet. If you have a massive 30-year mortgage, plus property taxes, insurance, maintenance, utility bills,
All of it.
that house is requiring continuous obligatory payments. It is consistently pulling money out of your pocket every single month. It requires you to keep working just to feed it.
Even though the value might be going up on paper.
Yes, the value might appreciate over decades, but in the short and medium term, it requires immense labor dependency and financial outflow. The book teaches that an asset is a resource that buys your freedom. A liability is a resource that takes your time. A house only becomes an asset when its cash flow turns positive.
For example, when you rent out rooms.
Right, or once the mortgage is completely paid off and it no longer demands massive, continuous outflow.
So the real wealth metric then becomes highly practical. It's not measured by the size of your salary, but by the performance of your assets.
Absolutely. Real wealth is measured by how long you could maintain your current standard of living if you stopped working today. It's the time your assets can support you comfortably. The goal is to build a sufficient portfolio of cash flow generating assets so that the monthly income they produce exceeds your monthly expenses. Once that equation is satisfied, you are financially free, regardless of your employment status.
The knowledge gap, then, is the problem. Most people spend their lives learning how to earn money, but they never learn the language needed to keep it and grow it.
And that leads to a frightening reality. The financially illiterate are essentially forced to pay taxes on their gross income, then acquire massive liabilities, and only if they have anything left over do they get to save. They are playing an entirely different and much harder game than those who understand the language of assets.
So the chapter takeaway is fundamentally about education. Wealth requires understanding the language of money, assets, liabilities, and, crucially, positive cash flow, and applying those terms rigorously to your life. That distinction between the job and the asset brings us directly to Chapter 3, Mind Your Own Business. The core thesis here is a powerful distinction. Your primary business is building your asset portfolio, regardless of where you draw your salary today.
This is a major paradigm shift away from the traditional model. For the majority of people, their professional job is their business.
Right, that's what they'd say.
They dedicate all their energy, focus, and intellectual capital to maximizing their employer's success in exchange for a paycheck. But the author teaches that while a job is necessary, it pays the bills, it funds your life, it is fundamentally not the engine of wealth creation.
So it's a tool, not the end goal.
Think of your job as a temporary source of capital. It provides the money to fuel your real business, which is your asset portfolio. The rich recognize this distinction. The poor and middle class often confuse the vehicle that transports them, the job, with the destination, financial freedom.
I like that analogy. So if your salary is the shovel, your portfolio is the gold mine. We need that shovel to dig, but we shouldn't confuse the act of shoveling with the act of owning the mine, which is where the real leverage is.
That analogy is perfect, and this leads to the actionable strategy the book mandates. Even those who are employees must focus on building assets on the side. The income from your job is temporary, it's fragile, and it's tied directly to your physical presence and labor.
Whereas the assets, once established, can be permanent.
Exactly. They grow regardless of whether you show up for work tomorrow.
So what are the specific examples the book highlights for assets people should be focusing on building, especially while they're still maintaining a full-time job?
The author suggests concentrating efforts on assets that require some initial input, but then generate passive or semi-passive income. This includes specific categories: real estate, generating rental income or through smart flipping deals, intellectual property, IP, like patents, copyrights, or creative works books, software that earn royalties, digital assets, and high-quality, long-term investment vehicles like dividend stocks, mutual funds, or bonds, carefully selected for that cash flow potential.
The key is that these are all scalable. Your job is not scalable beyond 40 or 60 hours a week, but your intellectual property can be sold globally 247.
Exactly. That's the wealth strategy the rich utilize. They intentionally grow multiple, diverse streams of income that are not tied directly to their time or labor. If they lose a client, or if one market segment experiences a downturn, the other asset streams sustain them.
That's true, financial stability.
It is. It's stability through diversified asset ownership. The employee is diversified across various tasks within a single job. The wealthy are diversified across entirely separate income streams.
And none of this works without capital, which brings us to the practical discipline required. We have to keep expenses low and invest consistently, making sure that asset building is prioritized.
This is where discipline meets application. You need to treat the money you allocate to asset building, what you're investing in your true business like, an unskippable bill. The money goes to the asset column first, before consumption.
Before you buy anything else.
Right. If you don't prioritize this, lifestyle creep, temptation, and unexpected expenses will always devour your investable capital. The discipline ensures the gold mine gets funded before the shovel owner buys a fancier pair of boots.
So the chapter takeaway is about defining your purpose. Prioritize consistent investment and asset building, making your portfolio your true business, the one that guarantees your future freedom. We've talked about mindset and action. Now, chapter 4 is where we move into the legal battlefield. The core thesis here is that the rich leverage legal structures and financial rules, specifically understanding the tax code, to grow and protect wealth.
And this is something the average employee just ignores.
Completely.
This chapter is often the most illuminating and frankly the most frustrating for listeners who have only ever operated as employees. The author clearly demonstrates that the system is fundamentally structured differently for people who earn a salary versus people who own a business entity like a corporation.
The playing field is just not level.
It's not.
Detail that tax flow contrast for us because understanding this mechanism is absolutely critical to achieving financial leverage.
Okay. For the vast majority of people, the financial structure is simple but severely disadvantageous. Let's imagine an employee earns $100,000 annually. The tax flow is they earn money, their paycheck. They are immediately and automatically taxed on that gross income. Let's say 30% or $30,000 is withheld. And then they spend whatever is left, the $70,000. They are financially operating from a significant deficit position right from the start.
And they have almost zero flexibility.
Almost zero flexibility or deductions available for their personal lifestyle.
So how is the business or wealthy person's path radically different under the same $100,000 income scenario?
Their structure is completely reversed, and they use the corporation as a buffer. They earn money through their entity, the business. Then they spend money on operations, necessary expenses, growth, leverage, things like business travel, certain home office expenses, education, vehicles.
Things that an employee can't deduct.
Right. And then, crucially, they are only legally taxed on the net profit that remains. So if that business spends $30,000 legally and deductibly on growth and operational expenses, they're only taxed on the remaining $70,000. And those expenses benefit the owner's lifestyle or asset growth directly.
So the system incentivizes owning the structure because the employee gets taxed on their earning potential, whereas the business owner gets taxed on their earning result.
Exactly. The employee pays the government first. The business owner pays themselves and their growth first. This is where the power structures comes in. The book explains how corporations are used not just to run a company, but to protect wealth, legally reduce tax obligations, and create significant financial leverage.
And it creates a shield, right?
A very strong shield. It legally separates personal assets from business liabilities, which is crucial for risk mitigation when you're acquiring assets. The entity can own the rental property, and if the entity is sued, the owner's personal house, savings, and car are often protected. That's massive financial leverage insulation against financial disaster.
But wait, isn't telling everyone to start a corporation or a side business just asking them to take on massive legal, administrative, and accounting headaches they don't need? Doesn't the complexity negate the advantage for someone just starting out?
That's a fair challenge, and the book addresses it by emphasizing that financial education includes learning to hire smart professionals. The administrative burden is real, but the cost of paying a good accountant and a good lawyer is often far outweighed by the tax savings and legal protection offered by the structure.
So the rich don't do all the work themselves?
Not at all. They hire experts to manage the structure. The point isn't that every person must be a tax expert, but they must be financially intelligent enough to understand why they need a corporation and who to hire to run it effectively.
This highlights the immense implication for the listener. Financial literacy extends far beyond saving and basic investing. It includes mastering financial rules to one's advantage.
While most people view the tax code as an obstacle imposed upon them, the wealthy view it as a competitive guide written by politicians and lawyers, often with loopholes that are perfectly legal to exploit.
Just by changing the entity through which they earn.
Right. The wealthy accelerate their accumulation exponentially simply by changing the structure of cash flow and lowering their effective tax rate.
The chapter takeaway is clear. Understanding corporate structures and taxation provides enormous legal financial leverage, shifting you from being a target of the system to a participant who utilizes the rules to your benefit. Okay, let's talk about opportunity and creativity. Chapter 5 asserts that the rich invent money. The core thesis here is that opportunities exist everywhere. The money is often right in front of us, but only a financially trained and creative mind can recognize and capitalize on them.
This is where the mindset we discussed in Chapter 1 meets the technical literacy of Chapter 2. The author teaches that the difference between the wealthy and everyone else isn't necessarily capital.
It's how they think.
It's the internal response to a resource limitation or a potential investment. The typical response, driven by fear, inertia, or a lack of financial confidence, is the declaration, "I can't afford it," or "that deal is too expensive."
And it's a full stop. It ends the conversation.
It ends the possibility. It accepts the current reality as static.
But the wealthy person's question is entirely different. They ask, how can I afford it?
That simple semantic shift from a statement of inability to a question seeking a solution is the psychological key. It unlocks creativity. Asking how forces the brain to move from analysis paralysis into problem-solving mode. And this is how the rich invent money.
Not through mystical means.
No, not at all, but through financial creativity, leverage, and smart structuring.
So the book presents a kind of opportunity formula. What does that equation look like when applied in the real world?
It's laid out as creativity plus financial education, the ability to identify new opportunities, secure undervalued assets, and structure profitable deals. Financial education teaches you how cash flow works, how to use leverage responsibly, like other people's money, and how to perform accurate valuation.
And creativity lets you combine those mechanics.
Yes, in novel ways to solve a problem the market hasn't priced in yet.
Can you give us a concrete hypothetical example of how this invention process works using real assets?
Certainly. The author often states real estate deals. Imagine a property that has been sitting on the market for months. Everyone else sees the high price tag and the need for significant expensive repairs. The typical response is, I can't afford the price, and I don't want the risk.
The door closes.
The door closes. But the financially creative person, using their education, asks, how can I afford it? They realize they don't need their cash. They use an option contract to tie up the property cheaply, recognizing that a recent zoning change, which everyone else missed, allows for a higher density development.
Okay.
They then secure financing from a private lender who is interested in the new development potential, not the current dilapidated state. They didn't invent the money physically, but they invented the deal by coupling a piece of public knowledge, zoning, with a creative financial instrument, the option contract.
And they made the deal possible without using their own working capital.
Exactly. The money follows the deal, and the deal follows the trained mind.
That requires massive action and confidence, though. Doesn't this approach require huge upfront risk?
It requires action, but not necessarily huge financial risk if the analysis is sound. The book differentiates between calculated risk and blind gambling. The wealthy act fast when opportunities arise. They focus on analyzing the situation, mitigating risks through due diligence and structuring, rather than being paralyzed by the abstract fear of making a mistake.
And inaction has its own risks.
They understand that every opportunity has an expiration date, and inaction is often the biggest risk of all. It guarantees zero return.
The chapter takeaway beautifully summarizes this aggressive but educated approach. Opportunities don't necessarily require capital. They require financial awareness, intelligence, and the creative mindset to piece together a profitable solution. Chapter 6 presents another challenging idea for the traditionally focused employee. Work to learn, not to earn. The core thesis argues that capabilities that compound over time are far more valuable than a high salary today.
This is all about strategic career planning. It's about viewing your job not as just a source of income, but as a temporary paid training ground. Most people look at a job offer and only see the paycheck and the benefits package. The financially intelligent person looks at the job and asks, what specific transferable skills will I acquire here that I can use to build and scale my asset-building business?
It's a long-term view.
A very long-term view. The author suggests that early in your career, if you have a choice between a high-paying job that teaches you a narrow, hyper-specialized skill or a moderately paying job that exposes you to several foundational, generalized skills, you should choose the latter. The capabilities are the compound interest of your career.
What are the essential non-financial skills that the book details as driving financial independence? These are the skills that allow you to manage and scale assets rather than just service them.
The book is very clear that technical specialization alone is a trap. The rich require generalist skills to manage their systems. He highlights 5 key transferable areas. Selling, which is the ability to persuade, negotiate, and influence, whether it's clients or lenders. Communication, crucial for leading teams and explaining complex ideas. Management, so managing systems, time, and people effectively. Leadership, which is inspiring and directing teams toward a goal. And finally, investing, allocating capital, and monitoring performance.
And the example of the engineer is perfect.
It is. Think about it. If you are the world's best engineer, your technical skill is specialized. But if you want to start an engineering firm, an asset that requires other engineers, you suddenly need selling skills to win contracts, management skills to handle staff, and investing skills to deploy retained earnings. Your high technical competence is useless for scaling the business without those generalized skills.
That makes the distinction between capability versus promotion critical. Most employees are on a vertical track, chasing promotions, titles, and incremental raises within a narrow professional scope. The wealth builder is on a horizontal track, chasing capabilities, They might take a job with a slightly lower salary if it offers experience in, say, advanced negotiations or marketing, because they know those skills are portable and highly leveraged in their own business. So, the temporary loss of income is viewed as a tuition payment for a crucial skill set.
Exactly. And this ties into the struggle of specialization. The book emphasizes that highly specialized knowledge without the accompanying financial and communication skills often leads to prolonged financial struggle. You become irreplaceable at your task, yes, but you also become trapped.
Because your entire value is tied to your labor.
And you lack the skills to build a system that replaces your labor. The generalist skills allow you to scale systems. The specialist skills only allow you to command a higher salary for your time. And the wealthy want to build systems, not simply sell time.
If you're an exceptional baker, you can earn a great salary baking for someone else.
Precisely. But if you want to own a chain of bakeries, an asset, you need to learn management, sales, and logistics. Otherwise, you'll just be forever standing at the counter yourself. You have to choose work experiences that fill the gaps in your generalist knowledge.
So the chapter takeaway is an important career directive. Choose work experiences that prioritize teaching you valuable, transferable skills over simply paying the highest wage. See your salary as temporary funding for your skill acquisition.
No.
We've covered the external rules, the internal structures, and the required skill set. Now, Chapter 7 brings us back to the internal game, the psychological masterclass. The core thesis here is that financial success is primarily an internal game. It requires mastering your inner barriers.
The author makes a profound point. There is financial intelligence, and then there is financial courage. You can possess all the knowledge in the world. You can know the definitions of assets, understand corporate tax law, have capital. But if your internal emotional landscape is unstable, you will fail. These 5 internal obstacles will inevitably sabotage every opportunity.
Let's detail each of these inner barriers, because recognizing them is the crucial first step. We start with the most common: fear.
Fear, specifically the fear of losing money. This manifests as total, paralyzing inaction. The person is so terrified of losing their hard-earned capital that they refuse to participate in the market.
They just keep it in the bank.
They cling to the safety of guaranteed 0% return bank accounts, failing to grasp that inflation is actually guaranteeing them a loss over time. This fear of loss is so acute, it completely prevents them from ever acquiring the assets needed for freedom.
So the fear of losing $1,000 stops them from potentially gaining $10,000.
Absolutely. The next barrier is cynicism. This is the noise of negative voices, both external critics and internal self-doubt, that prevents action and justifies inaction. These are the people who say, that won't work in my market, or the system is too rigged for me, or investing is just gambling.
It's an easy way out.
It is. Cynicism is an easy default position that attempts to tear down others' efforts to avoid having to take responsibility for one's own life. The author encourages focusing on facts, education, and analysis to drown out the noise of the cynics.
What about laziness? That seems straightforward, but the book defines it pretty subtly.
Laziness in this context is often disguised by the phrase, "I'm too busy." People use busyness working long hours at their job or obsessing over low-value maintenance tasks at home as an emotional and logistical excuse to avoid the high-value, strategic, but difficult wealth-building actions.
So they're too busy to read a book on investing.
Too busy to analyze a potential deal, too busy to spend an hour on financial education. It's not physical laziness, it's a failure to prioritize strategic action over reactive task management.
That's a huge shift in perception. Next, bad habits.
The most common and destructive bad habit is the one we touched on earlier: spending money first and intending to invest later if there is anything left.
And there never is.
It guarantees that nothing will be left, because desire and lifestyle creep will always fill the available space. The habit of the financially intelligent person is the complete reverse. They invest a fixed percentage first, then they save for necessary expenses, and only then do they spend what remains. They force their lifestyle to adapt to their asset goals, not the other way around.
And finally, arrogance. This one can block growth completely.
Arrogance is the belief that you already know enough, or that your financial struggles are someone else's fault, the market's fault, the boss's fault, the government's fault. This intellectual complacency closes the door to asking for help, to taking courses, to recognizing new information.
Right.
The moment you believe you have nothing left to learn, the market guarantees you will lose. In a constantly evolving financial landscape, arrogance is intellectual suicide.
The conclusion here synthesizes the entire argument. The mindset, the internal game, is the greatest financial asset or liability one possesses. It's the control mechanism for everything else.
You can acquire all the external assets in the world, but if you haven't mastered your inner game, fear or arrogance will ensure you eventually lose them, or you'll fail to act when opportunity knocks.
The chapter takeaway is therefore critical. Master your inner barriers, as your mindset has the highest return on investment you will ever find. So, we've laid the groundwork: mindset, technical knowledge, structural leverage, and overcoming internal barriers. Chapter 8 asks the practical question: how do we actually start? The core thesis is that the path to wealth begins with small, consistent, disciplined steps taken immediately.
The great relief of the book is that it doesn't require you to quit your job and launch a billion-dollar venture tomorrow. It requires disciplined routine, and that discipline is encapsulated in the golden rule of investing. Pay yourself first. This is a non-negotiable financial principle that requires automation and commitment. The money you dedicate to asset acquisition, your pay yourself first amount, must be treated as a bill that is more important than your mortgage, your utility bills, or your car payment.
So you invest before paying anything else.
You invest before paying expenses or spending on luxuries. If you pay yourself first, you force yourself to creatively manage your remaining expenses, rather than waiting for leftover money that never materializes, because lifestyle creep is always there waiting for it.
And that pay yourself first action immediately builds momentum. If you start small, you find small opportunities to engage with the real mechanics of money flow, which builds confidence and practical knowledge.
Yes. The book emphasizes that practical experience is irreplaceable. You need to be in the game to learn the game. If you start with $500, you learn how a small investment is structured, you learn the mechanics of a trade, and you experience the reality of market fluctuations.
If you make a mistake, it's a cheap lesson.
Exactly. If you make a mistake with $500, the lesson learned is priceless, but the sting is minor. If you wait until you have $50,000 and make your first mistake, the lesson is painful.
And the book specifically stresses the importance of rejecting perfectionism. The danger of waiting for the ideal moment, the perfect investment, or the lowest possible price is just disguised procrastination.
Waiting for the perfect moment is just the fear barrier in disguise. It creates the illusion of safety through perpetual analysis. The perfect stock price, the ideal property market, the perfect job, they never materialize.
They don't exist.
The market evolves, opportunities shift, and by waiting, you simply lose the most valuable resource you have, which is time, and the power of compounding. The book stresses that immediate, even clumsy action is superior to sophisticated, perfect inaction. You must get your capital into motion immediately.
And once you start, how do you sustain it? That goes back to the power of routine and systems.
Absolutely. The wealthy do not rely on occasional bursts of motivation or willpower. They build sustainable routines and systems that ensure assets grow passively and consistently over time. This includes automating that pay-yourself-first transfer, scheduling time for regular financial education, and maintaining a disciplined review schedule.
It takes the emotion out of it.
The routine removes the need for daily, tiring decision-making, ensuring that consistency, the true fuel of compounding, is maintained.
That makes the chapter takeaway so relevant. Massive long-term wealth is the result of small, consistent, disciplined steps taken over time. It's compounding action driven by automated systems. We've reached the final principle, Chapter 9. The core thesis here is about evolution. The financial journey is not a destination, but a continuous process driven by perpetual learning. You never graduate from the need to learn.
If you stop learning, the market will inevitably pass you by. Financial rules change, technologies shift, new asset classes emerge. Continuous learning means maintaining a perpetual curiosity about markets, financial structures, and the economy.
Making the time for it.
And constantly making the time to read, to analyze information, and to challenge your own assumptions about how money works. The author suggests that you must treat financial education as an ongoing, non-optional investment in yourself.
Your knowledge base has to be dynamic.
It has to be. If you rely on the information you learned 5 years ago, you are already operating with outdated tools and rules. The rich dedicate specific, non-negotiable time blocks weekly to this self-education.
And this learning isn't just done solo, locked away with a textbook. The author places huge emphasis on the power of network.
Yes. You must intentionally surround yourself with knowledgeable, ambitious people who challenge you, inspire growth, and operate at a higher financial level than you do. These are people who can bring you vetted deals, offer specialized advice you lack, and crucially, hold you accountable to a higher standard of financial behavior.
Right.
If you find yourself consistently the smartest, most successful, or most knowledgeable person in your financial circle, the author warns that you are in the wrong room. You need exposure to those who are solving problems you haven't even encountered yet.
It's a continuous feedback loop. Your network helps you learn and helps you deploy capital effectively by providing access to better opportunities.
And none of this works without rigorous discipline and tracking. The book explicitly discourages that casual, set it and forget it investing. It stresses the importance of developing discipline in tracking investments, understanding your asset cash flow statements intimately, and managing your money effectively.
You have to know your numbers.
You have to. If you can't measure your portfolio's performance, its exact expenses, and its incoming cash flow, you cannot possibly improve it or mitigate its risks.
The final synthesis of the book is that wealth growth is directly proportional to mental growth. You can't expect your financial statement to grow exponentially if you are not dedicating time and energy to growing your understanding, your network, and your discipline.
This is the ultimate compounding takeaway for Chapter 9. Continuous learning and an expanding mind multiply your wealth far more than any single investment decision you make. Your capacity to understand complex financial concepts, structure, and risks is the only true ceiling on your financial potential. #tag final summary, 60-90 seconds.
We've covered 9 powerful principles that demand a complete reset of your thinking about money. Let's quickly recap the foundational differences we learned.
The journey starts with a foundational shift in mindset. The rich dad focuses on creating assets and freedom,
while the poor dad focuses only on maximizing a salary and job security.
The focus is entirely different. The rich prioritize building systems and assets that generate cash flow,
shifting away from merely chasing higher income, which only leads to higher tax burdens and lifestyle creep.
And this demands education. Financial literacy, learning the language of assets and liabilities, is essential.
Sometimes more valuable than a high professional salary, because it teaches you how to keep and multiply the money you earn.
And action is driven by internal control. You have to master your emotions, fear and desire, and apply rigorous discipline to your habits.
Prioritizing investment before consumption. Always.
Structurally, the wealthy understand leverage. They legally utilize taxes and corporate entities to shelter income and turn expenses into deductions.
A powerful advantage the average employee simply does not possess.
And the clear formula for lasting wealth creation is laid out. Acquire transferable skills which lead to building scalable assets.
And those assets ultimately build the systems that generate lasting financial freedom.
The entire journey is continuous. It begins with awareness, demands consistent action, and requires perpetual education. Don't wait for perfection. Start where you are and start today. #tag outro.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the foundational principles of financial independence. The knowledge, the structures, and the psychological map are now in your hands. But the theory means nothing without application. I challenge you right now. Take the lesson from Chapter 8 and implement the Pay Yourself First rule immediately. Identify one small cash-flowing asset you can begin building or acquiring, or one professional skill you can start learning today, no matter how small the action.
This knowledge is fundamentally transformative, but only if you apply it with courage and consistency. Your financial future is not determined by the job title you hold today. It is determined by the financial rules, structures, and disciplines you choose to live by moving forward. Step out of the cycle of fear and debt and begin building the life your assets can afford.
Learn, grow, and earn. This has been Insight to Income. We'll see you on the next deep dive.